of people in employment in the country increasing by 258,000 in the first quarter of this year, but it was not enough to tame the rising unemployment rate, which now increased to 32.9%, translating to just under 8 million South Africans out of work in the country. Well, these are tough times for the country and the economy. Let's chat to Stanlib Chief Economist Kevin Lings. Kevin, thanks indeed for coming in. I mean, it's interesting that one of your first remarks in your commentary today was that, you know, in the first 3 months of this year, you had 258,000 more jobs or people employed in the country. I suppose what you're saying is that it just shows the resilience during very severe load shedding by business.
That's right. So going into the number, there was a worry that the unemployment rate would jump dramatically, that the persistence of load shedding, that the severity of the load shedding would result in more business failures, more companies simply making a decision, let's close down part of our business, let's get rid of staff in order to reduce costs. Maybe companies are feeling they're paying a lot more on diesel and they need to adjust their labor force. That never really happened. Yes, there are some sectors, the productive sectors, mining, manufacturing, construction. Undoubtedly, those industries are under pressure, and we did see some job losses there. But if you look at the country as a whole, there's a resilience to this environment. And so I looked at the numbers and thought, well, they're not great. We're not adding jobs the way we should. The unemployment rate went up, but at least we're not seeing thousands of more people out of work, and we don't have a sense that companies are imploding, that they're going out of business on a large scale and that the economy is disintegrating. There's none of that. There is a resilience to the overall business sector under very difficult conditions.
And it's important at this juncture to point out to that stamina, because there's doom and gloom, but you can see businesses are fighting back. They want to save something, and that's evident by the fact that they've kept these jobs in during those harsh times.
That's right. So business themselves, many businesses are undertaking renewable energy investment, so they're trying to become kind of self-reliant in terms of energy, and there's a lot of projects that are underway, and there'll be more added to it. So that, to me, speaks to that resilience. The other thing is that companies are aware that skills are hard to come by. So if you make a decision, I'm going to cut, I'm going to close a department, they're skilled individuals, you've spent a lot of money training those people up, and then you find in a year's time the electricity situation's better. Very difficult to get those individuals back on board. You're going to spend more in terms of salary. So I think business is thinking about this more longer term, trying to see if they can at least cope with the current environment, and then hope and try and do something to get an improvement down the line.
Having said that, we're still a country with one of the highest unemployment rates in the world. You look at semi-skilled, you look at low-skilled workers, and you think, if we were industrializing fast enough and we had improvement in our industrialization, the economy would absorb these unemployed people. Sadly, not the case at the moment.
So it's very unlikely that we are able to raise the number of jobs to cope with the population, the growth in the population. We need to create roughly 600,000 jobs a year to absorb the population. We would have to do better than that to reduce the unemployment rate. We're nowhere near that, right? And so in order to grow, in order to create 600,000 jobs, your economy has to expand by 4%, 5% a year, every single year. This year, we're talking about no growth, essentially. I think the Reserve Bank has something like 0.1, 0.2%. That's essentially stagnation. Under those conditions, you can't expect that we're going to absorb. And the problem is, of course, we're doing that year by year. And so, as you mentioned, the unemployment rate at 32.9%, one of the highest in the world, the number of people unemployed, the number of people on social grants, all of these numbers are going to get worse until we find a way to lift the growth rate meaningfully and then sustain it at a higher level. It doesn't help if you grow at 5% for 1 year. You've got to grow at 5% and then sustain that for 5 years. You make a massive difference to South Africa. That's the task ahead.
Graduate unemployment, very quickly. 10 years ago, we were sitting with an unemployment rate among graduates around about 5%. Fast forward 10 years to 2023, it's 10%. It's worrying that graduates, seemingly by the numbers, are finding it more difficult to find employment. What's going on in there? I mean, is it just a victim of what else is going on with unemployment?
So it's got to do with entry-level work. Companies want people who are skilled, who have got some experience. and there isn't as many jobs for entry level, whether you leave in school, you just leave in university or some sort of college. Very difficult to gain that. And we know that once you've got experience, once you've got some training, then your ability to find another job is actually not as difficult as you would imagine.
Yep.
But it's finding that first job, getting into the labor market, getting that skills is proving extremely difficult. And so there's a disproportionate burden from the unemployed on younger individuals and on the youth. And that's a problem in a country that is very young, because you're not offering very young people those prospects. And under those circumstances, people get frustrated, they turn to other types of activities. It's a very dangerous environment for society to live with.
Before I let you go, Kevin, township economies. Now, we just spoke about the low rate of industrialization. There are some people that say, look, you're trying to ramp up the cities, but you're not giving jobs to these scattered towns around South Africa. Therein lies a huge problem, and that's why you see these numbers increasing as well.
Yes, so we've got a fairly high rate of urbanization that's going on. Part of that urbanization is that many of the smaller towns are just not functioning effectively. Many municipalities are essentially bankrupt. And so they're not offering any opportunity within that municipal area. And so people say, well, I need to look for alternatives. And they flock towards the big cities. And obviously the big cities can't cope with that. And so you end up with a significant increase in unemployment in the rural area. And then you aggravate the infrastructure in the big cities. What we should be doing, obviously, in South Africa is trying to revitalize smaller towns, smaller cities. They have a lot to offer. We've allowed them to disintegrate. We can't afford to do that. And so it's got to start at the municipal level, get the municipality function, get basic service delivery going in those towns, and see if you can revitalize them.
Kevin Lings, Chief Economist at Stanlib, thanks indeed for coming in. All right, quick look to see